but I want to get to Ron real quick because he's in the room and I have limited battery. So Ron, the government backed mortgages are up to $970,000. So someone could buy almost $1 million home. Let me bring this article up so people can see what we're talking about here. Someone could buy almost $1 million home with a government backed mortgage.
And I want to know what down payment that requires. I want to hear that.
Yeah. So here are the details real quick. The Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA, today announced the baseline conforming loan limit for 2022 will be $647,000. That's an increase of 18%. I feel like they just had an increase to I can't remember what it was, like 400 something. Maybe that was the FHA increase that we're talking about.
Over the last 6 years, it's gone up $200,000.
Yeah, the federal government will now back mortgage loans of nearly 1 million with a new ceiling loan limit for one unit properties in most high cost areas. Now $970,800 or 150% of the $647,000. Special statutory provisions establish different loan limit calculations. Large metropolitan areas tracked by FHFA saw house price increases. Boise, Idaho. Basically, they're saying due to the incredible amount of home price increases that now these government-backed mortgages are also going to go up to kind of compensate for that. So is this going to be a huge win for home buyers, or is this what do you think the overall impact of this is going to be, Ron? Is it like they're catching up and now it's just finally back to normal and they've been behind so long? Or is this going to be a huge win for buyers, Ron?
I think it's going to be a huge win for buyers. I mean, if you look at, so my wife and I, we moved from Southern California. And, we were used to in Los Angeles, the higher conforming limits, right? The super conforming. So those high balance loans, they were in the, the sevens, and then they crept up to the 800s. And now it's at, 970 for those high balance. The significance of that is now you essentially, it looks more like a jumbo loan, but it's not based off of the jumbo loan characteristics where you have to, typically where you're confined to 43 debt to income ratio, or you have to have 6 months of reserves, or they may scrutinize based on self-employment. So now, if you have the majority of loans that are pooled together where they're under the conforming standards and they're for 970, I mean that's a huge win. It's a massive win. And when we moved to Dallas in 2018. We bought a home in 2020, and in 2020, the conforming loan limits were 510, 200, right? So we had to, because we were, we qualified for conforming and didn't really qualify on the jumbo side and didn't even want the jumbo side to begin with because the rates were so high because of COVID. Right. We had to put more down, right? Because the minimum was 5%, but that was at 510, but our home was above that. So we had to actually put more into the transaction. So had we been able to this year, right? If we bought it this year, it would have been 548, 200, in which case we would have only had to put down the 5%. Well, now at 647, that overshot what most people were even thinking. So earlier, I would say about a month ago or even 2 months ago, we were all told that it was going to look more like 625. But now it's up to 647, 200. That's massive. That's $100,000 gain between last year and this year. And it's all about the home appreciation across the country. So it is a massive opportunity. For home buyers, and it just brings in more buyers into listings. It brings them into the fold. So I'm huge on this. I think it's very exciting.
And Dan and I have kind of been joking for a long time that although we have these good things that are bringing in more buyers, that still could cause an issue of affordability because now you have more people that can afford more, right? So that does sound good, Ron, but at the same time, that further pushes a lot of these homes out of reach from people that were hoping to afford them, as now you have more bidders at a higher price.
I say it every single time.
My biggest concern right now is what's happening with inflation, right? And what's happening with the Fed. So the Fed, to keep the economy going during COVID, they bought $80 billion of mortgage-backed securities and treasuries every week during COVID. And they announced a few months ago where they said, okay, we're going to slow that down, right? We don't need to buy $80 billion because obviously the economy is moving right along. So they said, we're going to slow it down, otherwise known as taper. So one thing that hit the headlines, Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, spoke yesterday, and he said, regardless of the Omni whatever variant, we're still going to continue to taper, and we're going to continue at the same level, right? Most people were thinking, oh, well, maybe you don't do that because you're going to, there's going to be some issues with the whole new variant. Well, he said, no, we're going to continue down that path. The other thing he did is he removed the word transitory when it came to inflation. So last month in October, it was printed at 6.2% for inflation. And while most economists said, whoa, that's kind of scary because the Fed has set a target at 4% max, right? And they said they'll let it run a little hot, but 6.2 is a lot hot. And they said, okay, well, as long as it's transitory, where it goes from, this is just as a reaction to COVID, where people just wanted to get out and they're paying higher prices. But now if you remove that language, the chairman actually said he expects this going into next year. So if you have tapering and you have inflation and we have to, start raising the Fed funds rate, it's going to hit mortgage rates. And it already has. We already got pricing alerts, repricing alerts for the worst yesterday throughout the cycle, even though the 10-year was going down. So it's one of those things where it is going to, if you're right there on the border and you were, you're pre-approved at 3.25 at 400,000, and that's your limit, and you can't find homes anything below that, you're in trouble, right? You're going to have a real challenge going into the next, year. But if you were pre-approved at $1 million and you were, your debt to income ratio, you were fine and you can qualify for much more, then fine. Okay. But what's key right now is to reset and actually look and make sure you stress test any sort of pre-approval just to make sure that your buyers or you as a buyer that you can actually afford it if rates are going to continue to go up.
There you go. Good advice, Ron. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining the show today and giving us your tidbit, your expert insight into what this means.
Can I just point out how awesome that is? Getting real-time advice and input from, live, right with the show here from an actual lender that I looked at his profile. Hey, Chicago native, lived in LA for 16 years. Now they're in Dallas. So he understands the markets or the how this works in different markets. That's awesome to be able to get that, and I don't know any other show that brings that, so
there you go.
I'm stoked. That's really, really cool.
Thanks, Ron. And we'll kind of continue to keep an eye on this too. But one of the things we've been telling our clients is our agents is to do some math, do some calculations on what somebody can buy now with a 3% rate versus what they'll be able to buy in the future with a 3.25% rate, and then let people know that, hey, home prices are going to continue to increase. We're going to see home price gains slow, but they're going to continue to go up. So if home prices are going to continue to go up and we have an increase in interest rate, then not only is the money more expensive for you to borrow to put in on a property, so is the house that you want to buy. And Mike Elizabeth Rodell says, I think it's great for most buyers. They bought a house for $835, didn't have to put anything down. That was cool. And they got $700 more. And rate was 2.75. And they said being able to finance 100% allowed us to move before selling. So of course it's going to be different for your own individual situations, but that's just a story that, hey, it could create a lot of convenience with this new program.